In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at how to prepare 3D screen surfaces in Blender and how to export your layout as a template. Okay, so when we're thinking about 3D objects in using them in AI, or when you're creating them in your modelling software, there's a couple of considerations to think of. First of all, it's always worth thinking about removing any parts that are not going to be seen. So I've got a cube here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this into some kind of small DJ booth. So the first thing that I think about, obviously, as I mentioned there, is we need to consider which faces are not used. So I'm going to go into face mode here. I've gone into edit mode first, and into face mode. I'm going to press A to unselect everything. Then I'm going to rotate the world by holding in my middle mouse button and just spinning around a little bit. Now if I right click on the two faces that I want to remove, so I'm removing the bottom, because obviously that's going to be on the floor, and the back because that's the one that's going to be where the DJ is standing with the audience this side of him. So we don't need either of those faces. They will just overcomplicate our mapping and our texture. So I'm going to delete those by pressing the X button and choosing faces. There we go. Okay, so let's make this a slightly more interesting shape maybe. In fact, what I'll show you first of all, let's show you an incorrect attempt at preparing this for UV texture. So I'm going to drag the window over, I'm going to go onto the cube icon at the bottom middle of the screen and select UV Image Editor, like so. Now, if I just go back onto my cube on the left, I select all of the faces, so I'm pressing A to select all. Then I'm going to press U for UV Map. So if you remember, UV mapping is how our texture is applied to our 3D model. In normal terms, we would say X and Y, our horizontal and our vertical, but in this term we use U and V simply because X and Y are already used for position. So UV, sometimes UVW if you're dealing in 3D. So if I press Unwrap, which is the logical choice that you do for that, what we'll see is a little bit of a squashed, garbled shape. There we go. So what it's done is it tried to sort of unwrap it from the view I'm in, but crucially, we've got some distortion on the sides here because it's actually tried to keep all of the components joined together. Now obviously what we want to do is tell it to split down a couple of these seams so that our side pieces retain their original shape. So let's go back to our model on the left. Now on the left hand side on the tabs there's a shading and UVs tabs just there. And I'm going to choose Mark Seam. In fact, let's clear seam first. Let's select the right seam. Let's go on to our edges first. So I'm going to right click on one of my edges and right click, shift right click on the other to select both of them. Then I'm going to press Mark Seam and we'll see that they come up slightly orangey red there. And now if I go back to faces mode, I press A to select all, and then this time if we press U for UV map, and we choose unwrap again, we should see something much more desirable like that. So there you go. So you can see that we've still got that even flatness of the sides that we had before. Okay, so let's take this a little step further. So first of all, I'm just going to delete the object that we've got here. There we go, X and delete. Then I'm just going to create a new cube. There we go, a little bit out of place, but we're not going to worry too much about that. Let's bring him up a little bit. Okay, so as I mentioned, first of all, let's get rid of that extra faces that we don't need. Let's go into edit mode, choose faces, right click on one, shift right click on the other, then X and choose faces to delete. Okay, so I think we should give this a few more angles, make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to select my top plane, my top panel. I'm going to, on my Tools tab, I'm going to double click Scale. If you remember, if you click it once, then it will lock to the mouse, but if you click it twice, you actually get a number box down here. So I'm going to put that down to 0.5 by 0.5, like so. That looks great. Then maybe I think we should sort of line that up with the back a little bit, and then maybe bring that down a little bit. Okay, we've got some kind of plinth type thing going on there. And in fact, what I think we'll do, we'll have a couple of these. So I'm just going to get this one in position first of all. So he can go there. So that can be our main DJ riser. I'm going to go back into edit mode here. I'm going to select everything, I'm going to then go to my Tools menu and press Duplicate twice. Same reason, if I press Duplicate once, then the duplicate would be locked to the mouse. Pressing Duplicate twice just places it in the same place. Cool, so I'm just going to take that one over to there. I think maybe we'll just scale this one down a little bit as well. So this time I'm just going to click once on scale, and so we can see how it locks to the mouse there. Okay, I think that looks good. And then let's maybe have a quick front view so that we can get everything in alignment. Often I find the view perspective orthogonal, sorry, that tongue twister there. View perspective or orthogonal is very useful here. As you can see, if I go into orthogonal view, we get a much more usable view for our lineups. There we go. So let's bring that one into there. Okay, that's great. So I'm just going to go back to perspective view, and then just bring him over a little. Bring him in a little bit like so, and then we'll just duplicate him and we'll put him onto the other side, something like that. Okay, so we've got our main sort of DJ riser there with some kind of little plinths at the side. Okay, so let's get back to unwrapping. Now, when we modify the shape of our object, we actually have to apply that modification before we do any unwrapping, because unwrapping will be based on the stored geometry rather than the most recent geometry. So what we're going to do first, we're just going to go out into object mode. We are going to press Control and A, and this will give us the option of what we want to apply. We're going to apply rotation and scale. I'm going to do Control A and location as well. Okay, so now if we go back into our object, into edit mode like so, I'm going to unselect all the faces, and I'm going to go to my edge mode because we're going to split these parts. So now that we've got our edge selection chosen, we can right click on the first, shift right click, shift right click, shift right click, shift right click, and shift right click. So now we've got all 6 selected. I'm just going to go into my shading UVs tab on the left, mark seam, then we go back to face mode, A to select all, and then we are going to press unwrap. So pressing unwrap here is the same as pressing the U button here. It gives me the same menu. So if you see when I look next to the unwrap, we've got those same options. So I'm literally just going to press unwrap, click on the unwrap selection. There we go, like so. And you can see it's done a really nice job there of unfolding everything beautifully well for me. It's even been quite economical with its texture placement there for me, which is really nice. Now, sometimes you might find that you want to maybe move things around a little bit, and I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to just hit the S button, just scale it down a very little bit, like so. Go into my face mode. I'm going to just select a few of these faces. What I'd want to do, I just want to separate these components out a little bit. So press G to translate, and I'm going to hold the right arrow key in. Splendid. Click with my left mouse button. Then I'm just going to select the top panels there. Again, G to translate, and up a little bit, just to give us a bit of a gap. Brilliant. Then I'm going to put him there. Let's also add those components. Maybe move them down a little bit to even it all up. And I'm just going to select these ones on the right, and I think then we're in a good position. Okay, so that looks great to me. So we've got our nicely expanded model. So now anything that we play on here is going to not distort the texture. We don't have to kind of think in 3D when we're designing our texture. We can treat it as a flat surface, which for a lot of animation makes life a lot easier. So just remember when you start out, get rid of any faces that are probably unnecessary for the specific model that you're using. And it can also be worth thinking about when you do the seams split. So I kind of jumped into my splitting of my seams there without sort of explaining my choice. You've got to think about when you split the seam, obviously you're going to prevent easy animation in a particular direction. It's still very possible to animate there if you know the right techniques, but it's not as simple because obviously you've got to jump from here to here on your UV map. But what I've done is I've kind of looked, and splitting it there means I've still got a round ways flow for my my animation, and I've got a downways flow for my action. So really for me that is the point of least destruction to my content, because from the audience they're going to probably, very few of them are going to see that part of the surface or even be able to see the content go from there. But as this one is facing the front, it's more likely to go round the front or down the front like that. So hopefully this has been of use and open up your eyes a little bit as to how we work with true 3D models and prepare them in AI.